sounds, and at others, I did something that went completely against the grain of the original timbre to morph the sounds. And I use this cube to obscure, stretch, and highlight materials. To illustrate some of the differences that can result, I'll play for you two fragments that stem from the same source material, fragments 5 and 9. Both originated from the same sound of a door creaking open. Here's the inspiration door creaking open sound. And here's fragment 5. And here's fragment 9. Oh, the sound just cut out. So each fragment either examines a point in the cube, a trajectory, or a combination of the two. So for example, fragment 1 examines a static selection of parameters. And this fragment comprises small bursts of material with sharp onsets. This point can be described as having a mid-spectral centroid, a mid-high noise-to-pitch ratio, and a mid-high spectral flux. Here's a recording of that first fragment, and the source material is doorbell chimes. And another possible use of the space is to explore moving trajectories of segments of material. So fragment 2 exemplifies some of the possible trajectories that can be created in the space. I'm going to play for you a recording for the second fragment, which was inspired by a door banging shut. These principles can, of course, also be applied to larger structures in a piece as well. My next example, Crumbs for Amplified Percussion in Electronics, explores delicate grains, sounds, and textures. The work was written for Ensemble Mobile in Brazil as part of a miniatures project. The work was designed to be portable, and all of the instruments and found objects in the live percussion can easily fit inside a small box. The setup diagram for the piece is on the slide, which gives you an idea for the instrumentation. So we have 3 different types of bowls. We have a glass bowl, a wooden bowl, a metal bowl, some small percussion items, a large plastic bag that the performers scrunch with their toes, parchment paper, fizzy water, wine glasses, and a couple different types of beans. The work begins with small, bright, effervescent grains and gradually incorporates larger, deeper, and more resonant textures. The work consists of 6 short sections, each examining a unique set of handheld percussion instruments and common household items. The work is centered around a 1-to-5 ratio, or 5-to-1 ratio, which controls the piece's proportions in the distribution of the number of attacks per section. So on this slide, you can see the proportions graphed. So each of the first 5 sections are composed of 2 gestures, one decelerating and one accelerating. And the 6th section is divided into 5 additional parts that mirror the large-scale proportions in the piece. So on the slide, you can see the layout that I created in my DAW detailing the structure. So I mathematically generated these points in Excel and Open Music, then used MIDI as both markers for the electronics and in the score. So we're going to look at and listen to the score follower version of the work, so you can see what the score and everything looks like for it. And this performance is by UVA percussionist Yi Jianfeng. And you'll be able to hear the live version, which will be a different and lovely experience at the 3:30 concert today. Another way one can use the timbre model is to inform large-scale formal and structural elements of a piece. For example, in my work Cloca for chamber ensemble, the piece was structured around this bell sound. This bell resides in a historical meeting house in my hometown of Jaffrey Center, New Hampshire. So I began the piece by analyzing the bell's spectrum and spectral flux, and I pulled out 37 of the bell's strongest partials and analyzed their decay. I then reversed the sound, calculated out the timings for each partial, and then multiplied them by a factor of 7. The form of the piece consists of the retrograde of the bell sound, followed by the original bell sound. The piece is organized around vertical structuring points, which are entrances of partials and other block materials. So the work begins with large blocks of materials derived from other bell and clock sounds, and some examples of that are alarm clocks, kitchen timers, school bells, car alarms, domestic clocks, fire alarms, and wind chimes. And then the first structuring partial is presented 2 minutes into the piece. The blocks gradually become shorter and shorter as more bell partials are introduced, and the partials become so frequent that they completely overtake the material. So as previously mentioned, the piece ends with a single iteration of the overarching bell sound, which is a coda of sorts, and the first time that we're hearing all of the partials stacked on top of each other. So for each structural partial entrance in open music, I generated a series of spectra that move from the original bell spectrum to a more and more distorted spectrum. The fundamental frequency of each spectrum gradually shifts down. So the original bell's partials function as center frequencies in the distorted spectrum. And in the piece itself, each original partial is played as a held note, while the new spectral components are articulated through sweeping upward or downward gestures. I'm going to play for you a short clip, about 2 minutes, from the middle through the climax of the piece, which illustrates the structural bell sounds and the juxtaposition of blocks. And the ensemble performing this is Leah. And the glitching was not part of the piece. The next example I'm going to play for you today, Single Fish, illustrates some of the current projects exploring timbre and the voice. The aphoristic composition explores sounds and rhythms present inside Gertrude Stein's poem, Single Fish from Tender Buttons. The piece is divided into 4 sections, each examining a subset of the text. The singers are directed to explore a vast repertoire of theatrical characters and singing styles. The composition begins with delicate whispered and spoken phonetic textures and slowly incorporates pitch material, ranging from honky-tonk piano imitations to lush melodic lines. The reason I put timbre and the voice in a separate category here is that when working with singers, one also has the possibility of working with text and theatrical inflections. And while all these elements come together in performance, their timbral characteristics can be viewed and treated individually before being recombined. So when I was composing the piece, I first planned out the work's timbral trajectories. And after the form was in place, I composed the entire work as one would a fixed media acousmatic piece. So I recorded myself singing and speaking each part, pulled apart the text, experimented, and then when I was done, I transcribed everything. This has been my process for many of my acoustic pieces as of late. To give you an idea of what this process looks like, I'm going to share with you the sketch for the piece that is not meant for concert, but gives you an idea about my process.
Single, single, single fish, single, single, single fish, 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 single fish, eggplant, 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 single fish, single fish, single fish, eggplant, single fish sight.
And here's a recording from a performance at Neefnorf in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Single, single, single fish. Single, single, single fish. Fish, fish. Single fish. Cat. Single, single, single fish. Single, single, single fish. Single fish. Single fish. Single fish sight. Top, top up, top up. Oh, sweet.
My next example, Jouer, for soprano saxophone and electronics, was composed as part of my Guggenheim Fellowship at McDowell and Yaddo for the performer Kyle Hutchins and the Cube at Virginia Tech. The 140-channel version of the work was premiered in the fall of 2023, and the 4- and 8-channel surround versions have been performed worldwide over the past couple of years. The work is part of a collection of compositions focused on timbral storytelling. So in these pieces, I selected a theme and explore it from multiple composition angles, examining its full timbre and storytelling potential. Many of the works in this series also include live performers whose instruments often serve as a way to connect and bridge the varying sound worlds. So Jouer explores timbre and sounds associated with play. The electronics lead the listener through various soundscapes associated with the theme, while the saxophone part interacts with the evolving timbres and unifies the various sound worlds. The work contains 9 sections, each examining the theme from a different angle. The first explores sports sounds and balls bouncing and being hit. The second focuses on playground and amusement park sounds. The third on toys. The fourth on balloons. The fifth on video games. The sixth on squealing balloons and trampolines. Seventh on swimming pools and water games. The 8th on casinos. And the 9th is a coda of sorts where we have racetrack sounds, a cash payout, and a lot of sounds that came before. So we're going to listen to just a short segment of this piece, about 3 minutes, starting 2 minutes into the work, and you'll be able to hear the full version at the 3:30 concert. This is also a score follower video, and the recording is by Kyle Hutchins. My final example today is Reverie. The piece is an acousmatic composition, again, composed for loudspeakers alone, that leads the listener through an immersive fantasy centered around deconstructed music boxes. The work comprises 8 sections that alternate between explorations of the music box's gears and chimes. In the work, the music box's sounds are pulled apart, exaggerated, expanded, and combined with other sounds whose timbres and textures are reminiscent of the original. And as the piece unfolds, the associations become more and more fantastical, and the timbres increase in spectral and textural density. So gears are transformed into zippers, coins, chainsaws, motorcycles, and fireworks, and the chimes morph into rainstorms, all sizes of bells, pianos, and more. So I initially started this piece at the Cube at Virginia Tech and composed a series of miniatures as some material to work with for their spatial audio workshop. And then I picked these miniatures up again during 2 residencies at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts and UCross Foundation, and recorded many sounds in both of those locations. So if you're familiar with either of those spots, you might feel and recognize some of the soundscapes a little bit. I'm going to play for you a short clip, 2 minutes from the piece, and the excerpt begins around 2 minutes into the work. And you'll be able to hear the entire piece in surround in the upcoming concert. Each time I write a piece, I look for new ways to explore timbre, to find new ways to explore and push myself as a composer and artist. Each piece I compose serves as a piece of a puzzle whose image reveals a more clear and complete understanding of timbre. I would like to conclude by thanking Emily Coe for the invitation for presenting my work here today, Peter Van Zant Lane for his support, the Georgia Museum of Art for hosting this presentation and for sharing my piece sketch, the University of Georgia, and my performers Rachel Martin and Brandon Quarles for their artistry and dedication. If you'd like to hear more about my music or learn more about my background, please visit my website, leahreid.com. I also have an article in Leonardo titled Composing with Multidimensional Timbre Representations that more thoroughly outlines my approach through 2 instrumental compositions that's available online if you'd like to check it out. I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions, yes? And I hope to see you at the 3:30 concert and other fabulous concerts for the rest of today and tomorrow. Thank you.